today we are talking about slang. Alright guys, what's up? Ken Manube with Picking Duck, here to teach you a little bit more about sports betting. But today we are talking about slang. Yeah, that's right. Definitions, words, and just other terms used in sports betting that you may or may not be familiar with. Now I'm going to share with you some of the more common ones that that you may hear from time to time here in the US actually, but I'm also going to give you some words that they use over in the UK so that when you hear it, you'll get used to it because as you know, the sports gambling has been legal in the UK for quite some time now. So when you're going to these, when I've been going to these conferences, sports betting shows, everybody who is from Europe over there because it's legal. So they use different words, and I'm going to share with you some of those words right now. But first, let's start with some of the slang that I used to hear growing up, which you may have heard too, if you've ever had to make a phone call to a local book and you're trying to throw some money down. And those words were a dime and a nickel and maybe a dollar or a buck and also 50 cents. Now I remember, calling the guy like, hey, let me get a dollar on the Warriors -2 and then 50 cents on the over. All right. So it was that those were code words. So you may be familiar with it. And, I don't really know why they used it, but I'm sure it just sounded like a kosher thing, right? A dollar, 50 cents. But really what that is your dollar or your buck is $100 and your 50 cents is $50. So that's what you were putting down when you said those things. Now there's also the dime and the nickel. So you'll actually hear that a lot to this day, especially when handicappers call you. That's another definition, handicappers. So who are they? They're the guys, they're also called touts. They're the guys that sell you sports picks. So they can sell it to you over the internet, over the phone. But when these handicappers call you, they ask you, what kind of player are you? Are you a dime player? Are you a nickel? And they're just asking you like how much you play per game, right? And they're actually prying you to see how big your bankroll is, because the bigger you bet, the more that they can charge you for their service. And so, especially if you guys were going to get those calls, and if you're not familiar with it, tell them that, I bet like $20 a game, even if you don't, and then they'll give you their best deal. So you won't be paying those high prices. But, that's neither here nor there. But another term for handicapper or tout, which is being used overseas in Europe, is called a tipster. And when I first saw this word, I was like, tipster, what the hell is that? And so that's that's just basically their same word which we use as handicappers. So they use tipster. But another word that they use over there in the UK is punter, right? And when I first heard that word, you think football, American football for that sense, and the guy kicking the ball. And but in these terms in the UK, a punter is basically a sports bettor. So if you bet on sports, you're a punter. So that's what you are. Now let's see more words here. The other day I talked to you guys about buying a hook. Now you may not be familiar with the hook, but I think I shared it with you. It's basically the half point, because that hook can kill you. You can get hooked by it. If you lost by half a point, you just lost by the hook, and that's it, that hook got you. So that kind of sucks. Another word that is commonly used is chalk. So chalk, what they'll say is like, there's a lot of chalk on this board, or when we used to pick 5 games for NFL, which is for the super contest, we would always notice like, man, there's a lot of chalk on this card, and what that means is there's a lot of favorites. So we're taking all the minuses. So when someone has a lot of chalk, they are also called a chalk eater. So we're taking all the favorites. So we've been chalk eaters before, and sometimes, especially in betting, you don't want to see a lot of chalk. Because it's not always the favorites that are going to win. So keep that in mind, chalk eaters. Another one, which is common amongst handicappers, and when you're talking, is the word fade. Now, this is a very common one, so you can either follow or fade. So you can just fade, you're not going to follow that dude. Basically, go the opposite of that handicapper or that guy that you're following. Another common one, which I talked about the other day, which has to do with your lines, which that's another word. Let's go to the lines first. Lines is basically your odds. It could be your spread, money line, total. That's your lines. Now, on your lines with your odds, you also have something called juice, right? So in Europe, I think they call it vig, but that's basically the commission that the book makes. So I shared with you, and that's why you see -110, -115, or -105. That's the juice that they make, because for every 100, you have to pay like -110 or something like that. So it just depends on what the line is at. So that is the juice that the books make from your bets. Let's see. Laying points. Do you know what laying points means? That is also just like chalk. When you're laying the points, you're taking the favorite. So you're giving up those points, and that's what laying the points means. So like if you're taking the -3, you're laying the points, right? So you're giving up those 3 points to the other team. Here you go. Here's another common one, which is pretty simple: a lock, a guaranteed winner, right? So this is a lock that's commonly used. Other times, I know this has been said in our sports betting text amongst our friends, like, you're mush, And so once everybody, like, for example, if everybody starts hopping on the bet, and then you think some guy is a mush, he's mushing the pot, like he's a bad luck, he's a bad luck better. That's what a mush is. Here's another one that I just remembered. A beard. So a beard is a guy that places bets for someone else. So for example, you'll have some guys that are not allowed to bet anymore, and so then they use a beard, and that's a guy who places bets for them. So those are good guys to have. Let's see, what else do I got? Some easy ones off the board. That just means that you can't bet it anymore. For some reason, they took it off the board. So another common one is a pick'em. If you're not too familiar with sports betting, a pick'em is basically there's no spread. So it's just who's gonna win. It's almost like a money line, but it's basically even. The teams are even, so it's a pick'em. Who do you want to win? I talked about this one the other day: sharps and squares. So the squares are like the newbies, the novice. sports bettors. Sharps are the professionals, the guys you really want to be betting with. And that takes me to the last definition that I'm sharing with you today, the smart money. And that's kind of defined like the sharps. They're also smart money, but some definitions, sometimes they call it like the insider bets. And you can kind of consider the sharps and smart money as the same. But those are the definitions, some of the slang that is most commonly heard here in the US that you will hear and you'll experience throughout your sports betting here. But there's a lot more terms and a lot more things that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So keep watching and follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, and I'll check you guys later.